and welcome to today's webinar, which is focused on calculator use with regards to the Naplan testing. Today we have some fantastic presenters that will take us through basically their experience of preparing for the Naplan. So the first of our panelists is Melissa, who is from Queensland, Melissa Hourigan, and she's been using TR technology since, as the slide says, since 1995. And you'll see through her presentation that she's very skilled. And following Melissa, we have Brian Lannon from Victoria, who also has a wealth of experience behind him. So we're very excited to have both these wonderful presenters to be sharing with us today. In the event that you wish to ask any questions, please use your chat window to do so, and we'll do our best to get back to you with answers during the session. In the event that we don't, we will definitely do so after the event has finished. And seeing that we have a great deal of things to get through today, perhaps what we should do next is hand over to our first speaker, which is Melissa. And as we go across to Melissa, we hope you enjoyed today's session, and we hope that you're enjoying overall the webinar program and that you've taken the time to go back and have a look at the recordings that we have on the demand section of our website. Anyway, enough from me. Over to you, Melissa.
Thanks very much, Daisy, and good afternoon to everybody. As Daisy mentioned, Brian and I are looking at Naplan and helping teachers and students prepare for Naplan. So we're going to be going through a few things related to the calculator part of the Naplan numeracy test. Naplan, as we all know, is a nationwide or national assessment program for literacy and numeracy, or within literacy and numeracy. What I've got up on the screen there at the moment, which you should be able to see, is a screenshot from the NAP website, and I've got the address there. This PowerPoint presentation that we're using today will be available to you from the webinar website, the TI website. So with the link there, you can go in and have a look at the NAP website. It has a number of things. If you go into where it's got here, Naplan, and in that you can go into numeracy, what we need to remember is that the Naplan tests are designed to test students' abilities or achievements against national minimum standards. And that is what the Australian curriculum has then been focused towards. And if you want to see the actual national minimum standards, as I said, you can go to the link that I've got in the PowerPoint there and have a look at them. Now, we're not too far away, only 2 weeks away from Naplan now. So Naplan this year is on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, 12th to the 14th of May. But our focus one for this afternoon is looking at the numeracy calculator test. Numeracy tests are both on Thursday the 14th of May in the morning, and the calculator test is the first test that the students do. So it goes for 40 minutes, and it's only Year 7 and Year 9 that do the calculator test. So what Brian and I are hoping to be able to give you today is a few tips, tricks and information to help make sure that you're prepared and that you're able to prepare your students as best as you possibly can for that test. In doing the research for the webinar, I went through information and in particular to find out about the rules with calculator usage, because with different tests there's different rules, and I know that affects us especially here in Queensland with our Year 12 core skills test, Queensland core skills test, in terms of what calculator students are and are not permitted to use. Now, from the Naplan Handbook for Principals, the statement is that students are permitted to take into the test the calculator that they currently use at school or with which they are most familiar. And that's, I guess, the most important part of this, is they need to be familiar with the calculator. So students that are currently using the TI-30, that's the little green scientific calculator, in class, that's what they are recommended to be using in Naplan. If you're using TI-84 Plus in class, then the students can use those in Naplan. And if you're using the TI Inspire in class, then definitely students are permitted to use that. What we have to be careful of is the third point that I've got up there, which is test administrators are responsible for ensuring that all calculators have been checked and that no information that might advantage a student has been stored on the calculator. So there's a few different ways that you can do that, and if you want more information about that, the TI website, in terms of there's things like Press to Test and stuff, apps like that can shut off parts of the calculator. Main thing is that they're not to have any sort of programs written in there that will do some of the work for them. And really, my opinion on that is that, and this is just a personal opinion, in many cases it takes the students longer to get into some of the programs to run them than what it does to actually get some of the questions done without it. So we need to make sure we're teaching students to be assessment savvy and time focused there. So we need to make sure that we are preparing the students. And what I always like to remind students of is that calculators are simply a technology. They are a tool, and they are only as effective and as accurate as the person using them. So as I've said to students, when they say, if I ask them, are you sure that's correct? And their answer is, yes, that's what the calculator said. Just because the calculator gives an answer does not mean that it is correct. If you've put in incorrect information or you're not using the calculator correctly, it's going to give you incorrect answers. So we need to remember that. We need to teach students that they need the skills to understand how to do the question. The calculator is simply a tool to assist in completing the calculations a little bit faster. So that's a big thing that I remind students of at school regularly. It's also essential to make sure the students are confident with using them. If they're not confident, they're going to make mistakes, because under pressure of exams, we know that we all get a bit more tense, more likely to make little errors, so making sure they're confident, and that's what this is about. So we need to make sure that we're preparing our Year 7s and our Year 9s, and any students going into any assessment item where they're permitted to use a calculator, that they are confident in using that tool. So what we're going to look at is some basic calculator skills with the TI-30 and also with the TI Inspire. We're not looking at the TI-84 today, that students can use during Naplan or any other test situation as well. The first thing that I always do, and I do this at the beginning of the year, as well as a reminder at the beginning of test situations or the day before a test, and that is the calculator setup. It's not so much of an issue usually with the scientific calculators, but sometimes with the likes of the Inspire, if it's not set up, if students haven't taken the time to go and set it up properly, then particularly the most common one is working in degrees or radians, their angles, they're going to end up with mistakes simply because they didn't check the setup of their calculator. So a couple of things. With the TI-30, the way that we check it, obviously the students can check up in this top right-hand corner of the screen for the degrees symbol there. But as well as that, by pressing the mode button, which is, you can see here up next to the second function button, they go into the mode of the calculator. And you'll see here that they'll get the screen that I've got up there, and whatever is highlighted there or bolded there with the black square across it is what their calculator is set to do. So when I took this screenshot, this calculator was set in degrees, which is most important. The students need to be doing that. It's set in normal calculations, not in scientific or engineering calculations. The float is telling the students how many decimal places, so they can actually set it to 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places if they want to. I like my students to have it set at float because I like them to practice the rounding skills. However, they can choose to set it as they wish there. There's nothing particular. The last one here, classic or math print. Classic is what the students are quite often used to working with in scientific calculators, and that is getting decimal answers. And what we need to do is make sure that we are educating our students that a decimal answer in many cases is an approximate answer, because it is only using the number of decimal places that we set the calculator with. So in the case of the TI-30, we can have 10 digits across the screen. So that's our rounding there. But if we set it with float or some other scientific calculators that may only have 8 decimal places across the screen, they are rounding at that last point. So what TI have also included is the ability to use math print, and that is where their answers will be given in fractional or surd form if necessary, which is actually teaching students about getting exact answers. We've tended to use that more with senior students, certainly here in Queensland, I think, but it is something that we need to use more and more with our junior students, and certainly introduce with Year 7 and Year 9 students there. So to be able to do the changes with that, what I'm using here is the TI Smart View for TI-30, which is an emulator. So, and I use this in teaching. These can be purchased, and when you're using either a data projector or even an interactive whiteboard, you can have a calculator up there. So if we just go into the mode, you'll see that this particular calculator I've actually got set in math print. You're just using your arrows to arrow down. If you want to change something, you can move across. So you can see I'm moving across to a float of, say, 4 at the moment, and press Enter to select it. Okay, and then I can move down and I can press Enter there to select Classic, or I can go back to Math Print. So that's a good thing to make sure students have set up the day before, so they don't have to worry about that during the test at all. Now, the other thing we need to make sure students are aware of is just some basic keys that can assist them knowing where they are and what they do. The data key is over on the right-hand side here, and we're going to actually look at that one today. Fraction, for entering fractions, now it depends on the mode that you have it set up in. So if I'm set in Math Print, when I clear out of my mode screen, if I press the fraction button, you will see that I get a fraction the way we're used to writing it in class. If, however, I go into mode and I go back to Classic, when I press the fraction button, we get more of the, almost the divide by symbol, I guess you could say, the forward slash symbol. And they're used just slightly differently. So that the students need to be aware of how to use that. So that's the fraction button. As well, there is the ability to change between mixed fractions and improper fractions, which is the button just beside. It's using second function of your scientific notation button. Second function of the table key, which is the next one across again, changes from fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Just moving down there. So students need to change between them, and something that Brian actually made me aware of last night I'd forgotten about is to change between fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. You can also use the toggle key, which is the one just above the Enter key with the arrows pointing in both directions. They'll need to know how to square a number, so 4 squared, 6 squared, etc., putting in the number and then pressing the squared button. And for square root of a number is second function in that same key. The other one that they need to be aware of, more so probably in grade 9, and that is for powers that are higher than 2 or exponents higher than 2. So, for example, if they needed to do 5 cubed. Now, for that one, they actually use the what's called the little caret. Looks like an arrow pointing up. Okay, and so in that one, if they're in Math Print, it will actually look like an exponent. If they are in classic print, they will get the little caret on their screen when they press that button. And finally, the pie button, because they're going to be doing questions relating to circles. I'm sure that will be something in there, and that's just above, and you've got your pie key there. So there's some of the basic keys that will be important for students to know where they are and how to use them when they are working in the exam situation. Now, the other calculator, as I said, that we're focusing on today is the TI Inspire. So just some setup things with the TI Inspire. With the TI Inspire, we've got the on key, which is also the home key. And so when they press that, it turns their calculator on, and this is the screen that they get. So they've got the options of just calculate or graph, or they've got documents, etc. Now, to do the setup on the Inspire, from the home screen, they need to choose number 5, settings, and when they choose that, they will get a menu box appear. Now, something, and this is what I got caught with a little bit, is my first option with this, or my first instinct with this, was to go to the handheld setup option, which is number 3. However, that actually sets the handheld, because the Inspire is like a mini computer, it sets it up to be more about font size, picture size, all of that sort of thing. So what the students actually need to do is they need to go into document settings. So choose number 2, and when they go into document settings, they get this menu box up there. And again, display digits, set at a float of 6, they can adjust that. This is the interesting thing. With the Inspire, its default setting for angles is radians, so we need to make sure students go in and change that to decimals. Exponential format, we're working with normal. Real or complex, we're working with real numbers. Calculation mode is auto, vector format, and it does continue down. What I have told my students to do is to make sure they change that angle to degrees and then make that the default, which means when they go out of this and then they start it up again next lesson, or they open a new document, it will remain in decimal mode. Otherwise, when they open up a new document, it will go back. The default is radians, and it will go back to radians. So I've told my classes that use the Inspire to set their angle at degrees and click on make that the default, so that they don't have to stop and think quite so much with it. So that's your basic setup for Inspire. The only other things in terms of basics that you need to know for Inspire, and Brian's going to do more on the Inspire a little bit later in the session, is the page types, which when we had the home screen, they can do graphs. The geometry, I don't think they'll use a lot during Naplan because of time constraints. Lists and spreadsheets they will possibly use, and data and statistics they could use as well. Notes, you wouldn't have them used most likely, and data quest, we're not going to be collecting data during Naplan, so they really are going to use here, the other one that they're going to use is the Scratchpad Calculate one. So that's your basic pages there. There are some helpful keyboard shortcuts. I think the easiest thing to remember here is that if they're used to using, say, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, to cut something out and transfer it is Control-X, to copy it, Control-C, to paste it, Control-V. Undo is either Control-Z, which comes in very handy, or Control-Escape. To redo is Control-Y. And to toggle between your approximate and your exact results, so I was talking with about the toggle on the TI-30, that is where you use Control and Enter. You'll notice just above the Enter key on the Inspire is the approximation equals sign there. The other thing we need to remind students of, and this is something that is starting to really frustrate me with my class at school, we've only just gone to Inspires at school for a couple of classes. Most of our classes have got TI-30s, or we recommend the TI-30s, but the students are not charging their calculators, and they're arriving in, like, exams last term, oh, miss, my calculator's gone flat, because they've not taken the time to charge it. Now, the Inspires have got a rechargeable battery on it. They need to connect their calculators up to their computer to charge. for it to charge, they need to have the student software on their computer, which they receive when they purchase the TI Inspire. They receive access to the student software, so they just need to connect it up and it'll charge. But that is a big bugbear for me at the moment in my classes. Students.
Melissa, you're certainly not Robinson Crusoe there.
Oh, good.
Exactly.
I thought it was just my kids.
My Year 11 class, yeah. I can see the participants across today's webinar. Quite a few heads shaking, saying, nodding, saying, yes, exactly, that's my class too.
Oh, good. We're all in the same boat then.
Okay.
Okay, so I mentioned too that we're using the emulator here. I find the two emulators, the SmartView, TI SmartView for the TI-30, I use that in my lessons. I was using it just this afternoon with my Year 11 Maths A class here in Queensland. We don't use graphics calculators. We use the TI-30 or scientific calculators, and I find it an amazing teaching tool, so I tend to use that, and it just makes it so much easier when you demonstrate in the class. And the same with the TI Inspire, I've got the Navigator software that I use. However, just having the TI Inspire teacher software and projecting it up, again, you're able to show the students what keys you're hitting or pressing and what is happening from there. And so they're two very good teaching tools to help you make sure that your class is well prepared as well. So what I'm going to do now is just go through a few different things. We have, when I say we, Brian and I have gone through and had a look at some of the practice Naplan tests that are available on that NAP website, and just some of the features of the calculator that we can use to assist students with that. So this is one, this is a Naplan style question similar to one of the ones on there, and that is that John found the average of 10 numbers, so from 7 to 10 there. When he left out one of the numbers, the average then becomes 8. What number did he leave out? So we obviously need to make sure we're teaching the students how to go about this question, not just what to punch into the calculator. So to me, I'd be looking at the important words here are average of 10 numbers. So that's one of the first things I would be looking at. And when he left out a number, the average is 8. So if we look at the first part, found the average of 10 numbers. So what students need to do there is first of all find the total of the 10 numbers. Now one way that they can do this, oops, sorry about that. My apologies.
The emulator's just great, isn't it?
Oh, I've got to love technology.
Yeah. Oh, but,
no, I managed to go full screen.
It's my favourite software, Melissa, that showing the large screen or history of key press while the kids have got exactly the same machine in their hand. Because you're mentioning before the interactive whiteboards. So I've got a calculator that's sitting there. It's 1.5 meters high, and I can press the buttons on that, and it works.
Yes, that's my next step, because we've got we haven't got interactive whiteboards, but we've got the ability to make them interactive, and I just need to get the software running on my school computer. I want the 1.5 meter high calculator that I'm pressing the buttons on the board. So that's the next thing I want to train myself with. So in doing this question, one thing that they can do is obviously with finding the total is put in 7 plus 7 plus 7, or they could do 7 times 4. Another way they can do it is they can enter data, and I've actually got some information in here, so I need to clear my data. I'm just going to press the data button again, and I'm going to go down to option number 4 and clear all. So now I've got my list there. Now, what students are able to do here is to enter in the information, and the good thing when you're using this as a teaching tool is with the emulator is you can use the numeric keys on your computer keyboard. So I'll just enter that in. And because I played around with my float before, that's why I'm getting all the decimal points here. I need to go back and put float back in again rather than 6 decimal places too. 3, 9, and 10. So now that I've got my 10 numbers in there, if I go second function stat and do a one variable statistics option there, and anybody who's used the 84s will know that we're using the same sort of functions or processes here. With the one variable statistics, I've put my data into list 1. I need to make sure that my frequency is set at 1. I didn't put any frequency in list 2, so I need to make sure that goes back to there, and I must press enter for that to accept it, and then I'm going to press calc. Now the reason why I'm doing this, I can check that I have my 10 numbers in there, but also if I go down, the sum is 80. So the sum of those numbers there, one way of getting it is to use the table feature of the calculator. Another way of getting it is just the traditional way of 7 plus 7 plus 7, or 7 times 4 plus 8 times 3 plus 9 times 2, etc. So there's lots of different ways of doing this. I'm just looking at a particular feature of the calculator. So with my 10 numbers, I had a sum of 80. The next thing I do know is when John left out a number, so therefore he had 9 numbers, he had an average of 8. So we know if we're working in reverse, then we can multiply our 8, which is our average, times 9, and that gives us that the total was 72. So what we're able to do to find out what number did John leave out, we calculate the difference between them, and so our missing number is going to be 8 in that case. And what we're also able to do, another feature there, is if we have a look back with my calculator, if I go back to the top, we will actually see that the mean of the original 10 numbers was also at 8. So the only way you could have that 10 numbers has a mean of 8 and 9 numbers have a mean of 8 is if the number that you take out is also an 8. So there's different ways you can look at that particular question. The next one I want to have a look at, again, it's using the stat feature. This time we're going to look at using a bit more of the information in our one variable statistics. So I've got to go into my data. Again, as I said, I need to clear that list, or I can choose to, if I want to keep that list in there, I could choose to put my data into a different list. So I'm going to put my data into list 3 just to separate them a little bit. So what I need to do with this particular question, again, it's a Naplan style question. I asked some students, 9 students in particular, how many movies they watched over the holidays. And one student said 0, and a few students said they saw 5 movies. I don't think I saw any at all, so I think I fall into the 0 group. So what I can... Sorry, Brian?
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, probably me too. I read books and watch TI webinars instead. Don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I have nothing better to do but to watch a webinar on my holidays, which I actually did. Okay, so I'm just entering the data in here. So I've got my values in here. What I'm going to do, because we've got to check in this case, does our mean, median, and mode equal each other, or have we got situations one larger than the other? So I've entered my data into list 3, so I'm now going to go into second function stat. Again, I'm going to do a one variable statistic, but I've got to remember that I put my data in list 3 this time, so I'm going to go over and change that. Okay, there's still no frequency data in there, so frequency of 1, and I'll go down and press calc. And now, what I've got here again, there's 9 numbers, so I did enter 9 numbers in there. I've got a mean here of 3. So if we have a look, we need to know the mean, we need to know the median, and we need to know the mode. So I know from my calculator that the mean is 3. What I'm also able to find with my calculator by scrolling down is my median is also 3 in this case. So what I should be able to do now, mean and median are equal to each other. So straight away I can cross out the second option here because that said the mean is greater than the median, and this third option, the mean is less than the median. So what I need to look at is either the first answer or the last answer there. Now, we know that the calculators they're not doing mode for us. So the mode is the most common data point or data value. So if we have a look up here, the most common one is 5. It occurs 3 times. So what we've got here is our mean is equal to our median, but they are then less than our mode. So if we have a look, that's choice number 4 there. So that's how I can make my choice there. And I've used a calculator to get the mean and the median fairly easily. Now, in this particular case, students could also, again, add up and divide by 9. For the median, they can count to the middle value there. And the mode, as I said, you do that on your own. It's
all a matter of being empowered with strategies, isn't it?
It's just another strategy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need to be making sure, I think, that we are teaching the students strategies, not just teaching them how to press buttons on a calculator. The last one that I'm going to have a look at from a statistical point of view is another Naplan-style question. This one has some data about books being borrowed from the library. So in the top of the table here, we've got the number of books that were borrowed, and in the bottom of the table, we've got how many students borrowed them. Okay, so this is one where we do have frequency data. So again, I'm going to go into my calculator. So I'm going to go to data, but because I need to put in frequency data, I'm actually going to clear out all my lists. So I'm going to put my number of books into list 1. And I'm going to put my number of students or my frequency into list 2. So I just right arrow across to do that. Okay, so now I've got that information in there. And this time when I do my statistical calculation, I'm again still doing a one variable statistic. Now we've got to make sure students understand that the one var stats, one variable statistic, we are only looking at one variable here, which is the number of books borrowed, because number of students is a frequency value there. Two variable stats is where you've got, for example, time could be along one axis and distance could be along another axis, or as your other variable. So making sure students understand that. So it's still one variable stats, but this time my data is in list 1, and I do have frequency data in list 2. So I'm going to move that across. So I've got my data in list 1 and I've got my frequency in list 2. So I can now go down to calc, and it tells me that there were 27 students that borrowed books out that particular day. What we're asked for was the total number of books. So the total number of books, we need to go down to find sigma. And so we've got sigma x down here, and there were 51 books in total that were borrowed that particular day. And what I have done as well is in the PowerPoint, and I've got to click through it here because I went ahead of myself, is I've actually got the instructions there and reminders on how to clear the data out. So I put in the number of books by pressing 1, enter, etc., arrowed across, entered my number of students, went into stat, one variable statistics, making sure that I set up the frequency list, and then I went down to find the total there. And interestingly, I've got a total here of 50. Oh, that was a different screen. I was going to say, hold on a minute, I've got a problem here. That was from a different calculation, but yes, you want to go down to get the sigma x. Uh-oh. So that's some of the statistics things. Brian is going to look later in the webinar at using the Inspire for those same sort of questions and how we can do that as well. Because I'm conscious of time and I don't want to cut Brian out too much, I want to have a look at two other things. One is scientific notation. Now, something that I really like with the TI-30, and that is that we can have scientific notation that looks like scientific notation. And if you're actually looking at the little picture I've got on my PowerPoint slide here, you'll see that it's one that's got the little caret in it, so it doesn't look like scientific notation, and I will need to go back and change that. But what we're able to do, students need to get used to working with questions similar to this, and especially if they're doing things in science, we need to remind them that the maths that they learn in maths can be used in science lessons as well, and that'll stop the science teachers blaming the maths teachers for not teaching them properly. So we've got a situation here, bacteria, the total mass of 2 bacteria is 5.4 times 10 to the negative 12 grams. One of them is 4 times 10 to the negative 13 grams, so what's the mass of the second bacteria? So we've got a fairly basic subtraction question here, but we need to make sure that students are able to enter the information and do the calculations. So looking at the calculator, and I will just check my mode, I'm going to put my mode into math print.
Yep, and math.
And I'm going to change the float because I'm sick of those decimal points. Decimal places there.
The math print is great for this, Melissa, I think, because it helps the kids see the scientific figures as one figure. It's
Absolutely.
not 5.4 by 10 to the negative 12, something to be worked out. That is the figure. That's the number.
Yep. And that's, I do really like this. So the number there, and the students don't have to press the times. All they have to do is go up to their times 10 to the power of n, or their scientific notation button, and you'll see that it puts it in there for them, and we want that to be a negative. Now, big thing is reminding students to put a negative sign in, not a minus. They will get a syntax error otherwise. Okay, so they can see that that is a number. And what I did, I just pressed the right arrow there to just move out of my exponent or index box there. So I need to do 5.4 times 10 to the negative 12. I'm then going to subtract. Now the other one has a mass of 4 times 10 to the negative 13. So I'm going to subtract then 4 times 10 to the negative 13. And as Brian said, it just looks, it is incorrect formation. It's very visual. Students can see that. When we press enter, it is also going to give us the answer in that same scientific notation. So I really like the math print for exactly that reason. It's just getting the students used to it because they're so used to having rounded values, and I think it's a lot better than what a lot of the scientific calculators used to do with, there were all sorts of ways of showing scientific notation, and I think it caused more confusion than anything else. The very last thing that I want to have a look at is equations and table feature. I've only recently discovered or looked into using this, and Brian's going to do a little bit more with this one as well. I won't go through the exact question. I'll just show you very quickly from a PowerPoint point of view. So if you press the table key, what you get is the ability to enter a function in. And so we have to remember to enter the function in terms of x, and the x key, the variable key, is down here beside the number 4 key. So we can enter in a function. So for example, if we're given an equation of x minus 5, we're actually able to enter in x minus 5 and press enter. And what happens is it will then ask us, well, what's the starting value you want to have for your equation, your table? And you can change that. It's generally set for 0, but it remembers what your previous one is. And your step there actually is how do you want your x values to increase. So if you put in step equals 1, that means you're going to start at 0 and you're going to have x equals 0, x equals 1, x equals 2, etc. And so you go down then to OK, and what happens is you get a table of values, which you can see down the bottom of the screen here. And with the table of values, this is our x. We started, I must have set this one for 1, and you can see there that if we've got x equals 1, 1 minus 5 is negative 4, 2 minus 5 is negative 3, 3 minus 5 is negative 2, and so on. And you can scroll down through the values. Oops. So that's another really powerful feature there, and that's one that Brian's going to have a little bit more of a look at shortly with the question. So I'm actually going to hand over to Brian now for him to look at some of the features with Inspire and also teaching methods as such for using this. So it's all yours, Brian.
Fantastic, and thank you, Melissa, there. And good afternoon, thrill seekers. I hope it's a good day for you wherever you are in your part of the world. Beautiful autumn day here in sunny Yakandanda. Look, as is so often the case, eh? Now, Naplan preparation, I was actually doing it with my Year 9 class this afternoon, and Melissa, I was using a lot of your slides there, which the kids really appreciated.
Could you be able to help with that?
The statistics, for example, I haven't worked on them this year with my Year 9 class, so they haven't done statistics since Year 8 last year. But to just have a quick review using the power of their calculators, they really appreciated it. We've been talking about problem solving strategies, and they quite appreciated the fact that what's happening here is they're being armed with further strategies that they may use in their test. As far as Naplan preparation goes, look, drilling students through a raft of practice papers and practice questions isn't the best way to go. It actually says that on the NAP website. They quite clearly state that they're about examining numeracy skills, and really skills are developed through experiences. And as far as the things we can show, we can illustrate with these calculators, the dynamic interactivity, the multiple representation, pretty powerful connections and experiences for kids to make. So I'm going to just pick up here and point out that what we can do is look at this. Okay, we've got a Naplan test question, and you can say, how do I utilise whichever calculator I want, whether it's the TI-30 statistics package in this situation or the TI Inspire statistics package, and dig into that question. Or we can look at it from a calculator feature perspective, which, as I said, my students are just loving, and I have the benefit of the big 1.5 metre calculator sitting on the board in front of them. They can even come out and press the buttons. It works. It's great. So from the TI-30XB, which my Year 9 students have, by the way, but something we're looking at doing, we book list the TI-30 to Year 7 to Year 9, and then the Inspire Year 10 to 12. But the more and more we're looking at Inspire, we're thinking, wow, there's so much in that we're considering bringing it down the book list to commence it at Year 9 next year. I've actually got I agree with that, Brian, yep. In that we're looking at that sort of thing as well. We book list the TI-30 from Year 7 to Year 10 with students in Year 10 that are looking to go to Maths B and Maths C here in Queensland. Have the option of purchasing, at the moment, the TI-84, but I'm really pushing for the TI Inspire. We do have a group of classes at the moment, which is our Math Science Academy classes. We've got a Year 7, a Year 8, a Year 9, and a Year 10 class that do have the Inspires, and I'd like to see a lot more classes with the Inspires, and just the things that we can do from a teaching perspective with them, I think is amazing. But it's obviously a school decision, but they can do a lot, and it's amazing what the students can pick up. Sorry, Brian, back to you. No worries, yeah. So certainly something we're reviewing at the moment. But the students love the features on the TI-30, the table feature, which Melissa's just shown you. Also the statistics package with data summaries. Linear regression is one that the kids were doing today, and they thought, wow, that's really good. The same sort of things can be done on Inspire. Inspire has got a lot more power. It can do an algebraic solve, substitution into algebraic expressions, and the whole area of dynamic visual representations is just so powerful. Now I'm going to just quickly show some of these features through a couple of Naplan style questions. You've noticed that Melissa was referring to this is a Naplan style question. For copyright reasons, we're not allowed to show actual Naplan questions. You can, if you wish, download from this link here 4 sample tests. So there's the 2 Year 7 tests and the 2 Year 9 tests from the Naplan website. What I've done is I have rewritten some of those questions with only the numbers changed in order to protect the innocent. So if you wish to practice the table feature, these are the ones that I think are good for illustrating that. And remember, it's just one of a set of strategies that may be employed. My students quite appreciated that idea too, I thought. Here's one from the Year 7 paper. Our friend Peter thought of a number and he multiplied it by 4 and then divided by 3 and got a result of 20. I would prefer my students to be doing this with algebraic balanced equations, but they may instead use the table feature, and I'll just quickly show you this. And my students were quite happy with this. I thought, well, I don't know, you're being a little bit lazy here, I don't know. But they liked the idea that, okay, if Peter's number is multiplied by 4, then divided by 3, you've seen how we can enter that sort of thing. And then and enter here. If I start a table, we talk about input and output with a function machine. So if I put in 0 and then see what result comes out, then increase it by 1 and so on. I can actually specify the number I put in, but let's just keep it on automatic for the moment, and enter. So if Peter thought of 0, then the final result is going to be 0. If he thought of 1, then the final result is 1.33 or 1 1/3, but we know the final result was 20. And aren't we being lazy here? If we scroll down through the output values until we see a 20 pop up, and we can then conclude, well, maybe he must have put in 15, so it was 15 his original number. As I said, it's not perhaps the only way of doing that problem, but it's giving kids confidence, it's arming them with another strategy, and they just feel better about it. Year 9, similar sort of thing, and my students did this today. They went into the table, and if there's already something there, you just press clear, and then you type in your new one, 7 minus 5x, and enter a couple of times. What we might want to do, if we're looking at what's going to come out when I put 4.8 in, 4.8 is where I might choose to start, and then you can see that the output is negative 17, corresponding to a 4.8 going in. Look, again, it's not perhaps the fastest way of doing it, but it certainly gives a context and a visual of what's going on, and students like that. I can tell you firsthand that mine did this afternoon. So here's another one from a Year 9 paper. Question 14 here. I would probably hope that students wouldn't need to use a calculator, but question 26, I think the calculator really helps, where I've got this 3 plus 4x minus x squared, same sort of deal, 3 plus 4x minus x. Be careful here. We see a button here that says x squared. That will square whatever is on the display, but I want to go, there's my variable x, and there it is squared. And enter. And let's just put in negative 3. If I type, it's just going to type over this. Melissa already told you I need to use the negative sign here, not the subtraction sign. And I'm thinking negative 18 might be the corresponding output, which fits as one of our answers, so we're looking good. One variable statistics has been illustrated. I'm just going to move along then. This is another example, and again you see the references if you want to practice this from the sample papers. Two variable stats is much more fun in my view. I think it's important to have the conversation with students about the difference between data and statistics. So the data are the figures. Let's have a look at a question. Here we have a plumber who has, who sets his or her price with a call-out fee plus a variable amount per hour. So if you employ this person for 2 hours, the fee is $170 and so on. I've entered the data into lists. You can see here 2 corresponding to 174 to 266, etc. And down we go. So we just enter those into the 2 lists, and to then drill through the data to get at statistics, because things like mean and mode and median, they aren't data, they're numbers that tell us about the data. So we drill further by going second data, and we're into our statistics. I want 2 variable statistics because I have paired data, and this is where the lists where those data are stored. And let's see the calculations. And I have 4 data pairs. That's good. The mean of the first set of numbers is 4.25. I don't really want to know about that. I don't care. But if I arrow down, we get all sorts of other goodies. But it's a matter of knowing what goodies we're looking for. And my students were rapt with this. I haven't done this with them. I haven't done linear functions with them yet this year. Of course, they've studied it a little bit in the past, but they really appreciated the fact that this A and B has worked out a formula that connects the job price to the number of hours. And so we talked about this, and we talked about, y equals AX plus B, and we came up with the correct option. They were pretty chuffed with that. Again, as I said, it's not necessarily the only way of approaching the problem, but it's certainly a powerful strategy to empower our students with. Gives them the confidence. Here's another one, same sort of thing. So the question in the Naplan paper was using not boxes but something else, and it had pictures attached. But that's another one that you may wish to try. All you need to do there is in the data, you would actually, if I hit data twice, I get the option of clearing lists. I can clear lists individually, or I can clear all of them. So I match 5 boxes with a height of 23 centimetres. Bang, bang. And I match a stack of 7 boxes with a height of 29 centimetres. And how sweet this is, because you can then do, once again, the regression. I'll just quickly do that. And so on. But I found today that I showed the students the first one, they then did the second one. And as I said, I haven't done this topic with them. It was just a little bit of a review prior to their Naplan test. And that's as much as we're going to do, by the way. TI Inspire CAS, let's just move this one to the side, bring up this baby here. Year 7, Year 9 matched questions. Here's Peter with his question again. We can use a solve function on a CAS to do that. Again, I don't know that we'd really need to, but I can quickly show you. I think the power of this is more so in arming students with strategies and getting them to see how this works. So I've got a calculator page. under menu, I'm going to come down to algebra and say solve. And what's our equation? Well, 4 times Peter's number, 4x. Let's call the number x, and we'll divide that by 3, and we'll put it equal to 20. And at this point, I'll put a comma because I have an equation written. I'm asking the machine to solve my equation, but I need to specify what variable I want it to solve for. Of course, there's only one variable in this equation, but imagine if it was an equation full of different variables, I would need to specify which one. Which in itself, I could have an equation that's totally written in terms of variables, in which case I'm transposing the equation. My physics students just love that. Back in our PowerPoint, here's another one where the solve feature is, again, very, very helpful. I'm going to scoot ahead, though. Substitute. Again, using the algebra of this, we can set up a function. I don't know that you'd really want to use the calculator for that there, but certainly something like this. And on the CAS, something I really like is defining functions. So if I go to menu, and the first in my actions is define, and I'm going to define that a function upon the variable x equals, I'm doing the second question here, 3 plus 4x minus x squared. And so my calculator now knows what a function upon x is. The thing I use with my students is I draw pictures of function machines on the board, and they have had a smokestack and a bright light and so forth. But if I put -3 into this function machine, there's our negative key, then what pops out is -18. And of course we can try any other numbers that are put into the function machine. Very, very powerful illustrator. As is the dynamic nature of the thing overall, there's some questions that you might want to look at where I think the dynamic power of the TI Inspire really, really drives home some wonderful experiences for students. I'll just illustrate one quickly because I can see we're just about out of time. This one here, I know it's a Year 7 one, but just getting kids to see how data plays out in the in the calculator environment. I'm just switching to another one because I've typed this in earlier. So the question is, okay, I've got on day 1, so I've got a job feeding people's pets. I fed 3 cats on day 1, 2 dogs and 2 fish. On day 2, I did 1 dog, 3 fish and 5 birds, etc. And the question on the Year 7 paper there was then having students relate that to some sort of graph. Here's what it looks like in the Inspire environment. I'll just get this one out of the way a bit. And so I've used here I will maximise it, I think. Yeah. So what I've done is I've used and I'll get that one out of the way. I'll bring that down a bit. I've used a list and spreadsheets table. So I've got the total number of cats over the days is 3. The total number of hang on, that's not the same data. This is what I did when I was practicing. So we add up the number of cats, dogs, fish, put the data in, and then we can get a bar chart of that, which is just a great illustrator. So that's again just the power of the visuals.
Brian, that students like with that one is if you go into your menu, you've got a bar graph there at the moment, but if you go to your menu with that and to choose a different plot type, and they see dots and all sorts of things moving over the screen, and they just sit there and go, oh. Yeah,
the fact that it moves as they build. I realise I'm just conscious of our time. I might just quickly show you that. Whoops, wrong one. bring this one back into the game. No, I'll just grab my other calculator. Here it is. The sort of thing Melissa's talking about here. If we add in, so our listen spreadsheets, so I might have my animal and the frequency, and let's go with a cat, dog, fish, bird, and the frequency of 5. Right. What about 5 again? I could have picked better data here, Melissa, couldn't I?
I was just looking at that.
Not exciting at all.
You can always make it 5, 6, 2, 1 or something.
But the next page I'm going to add in, remember, control, and then on the document key, adds page, you'll see that's the second function there. If I go to data and statistics, and here are our 4 data points, but they don't really know where to go at the moment. Where it says click to add a variable, if I click in this space here and say, well, I want animals there, and the trick here is now, if I sort of highlight that but don't click on it, but go to control menu, and can I do that? Oops. That doesn't work. Yeah, the difference between the emulator and the... I'm going to go in here and I'm going to right-click and add summary list, and I'm going to go to frequency, and I get this popping up for my bar chart. This question 13 that I've popped up here, standard sort of thing where we're making something with manipulative, say sticks are being used to make this set of triangles, and if the pattern is extended, what's the rule that's describing the number of sticks required for the number of triangles. I'm going to show you one that Foxy did. I'll get this one out of the way now. This is Peter Fox. So this is part of a little algebra test that Peter made up, where he's got a dynamic here of, it's not triangles in this one, it's squares, and as we increase the value of the slider, we're getting more squares being constructed with the number of sticks. Now, I certainly don't advocate that students do this exclusively on a calculator. They should be building this with sticks or paddle pop sticks, whatever you've got. But this supplements that. So I've got this emulator running at the front of my classroom. This is the illustrating tool, and students work along in partnership. If you like that sort of thing, I'm finishing up now. If you like that sort of thing, there's much more available on the TI website. That's the Australian link, and Foxy has listed a whole heap of wonderful resources that have the TI Inspire files, student worksheets, teacher notes with solutions, and they are a free download from the Australian version of the TI website. This is what happens when I put in education.ti.com on my computer, because I've set it to default to Australia. If you type in education.ti.com, it may take you to the USA site. Change that. See the site thing here? Change it to Australia and New Zealand, and then click a box that says make that the default. Over here where it says teachers, if you click on that, you have the Australian curriculum inspired, and it's referenced to our Australian curriculum standards, and you get wonderful, wonderful lesson packages in there, and you can see that that's set up by year level. Can I just quickly point you to another one? If you're really keen on the 30XB multi-view, and your students is using that, there's a whole raft of lessons that were specifically written for that, for the National Statements of Learning, which, if you were listening at the start of the webinar, Melissa told you that is what the Naplan is based upon. Now, I'm fairly intimate with this one because I coordinated this project a few years ago now. Instead of clicking on Peter's Australian Curriculum Inspired, click on Learning Centre, and then I recommend you do an advanced search, selecting the TI-30XB multi-view calculator. I'm whizzing through these slides, I know. I'm conscious of time. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint at the end of the presentation. And selecting that, you get a set of lessons. Here's one, Matchstick Mathematics, that Ian Edwards from Melbourne did. And what I have in that suite of activities is a PowerPoint, another PowerPoint that you can use, and also sets of student worksheets and accompanying teacher notes with solutions. Oh, and an assessment, student assessment. So, yeah, that's in there as well. Is that the one? No, it's back on the worksheets. So there you go. We've covered quite a lot there, and we've gone over time. I better head back to Daisy.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone. It does appear as though we've run out of a bit of time, but such is... You do run out of time when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So thank you to both Brian and Melissa for a very informative and entertaining webinar session. Today, and thank you to you, the audience, for listening. As mentioned by Melissa and Brian, the PowerPoint and the information that you've seen tonight will be available to you. Basically, the recording of today will be available on the demand site on our internet page. From this Friday, and along with that will also be the PowerPoint that you see today. In addition, you will receive an email in the next 24 hours, basically thanking you for attending today. It will also have the link to where the recording will be housed, and also a couple of the web pages that Brian referred to. You'll have links to that too. So I know he mentioned the Australian Inspired site, and this is where you'll find the webinar. So look, I know we've run out of time, so I won't keep you any longer. Thank you again to our wonderful presenters. Thank you to you, our audience. We hope to see you next time. A couple of the upcoming webinars include looking at the new 84 CE calculator. There's IB being covered, as well as STEM, which is on the 19th of May. So thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, and we'll hopefully see you